for that. So I am excited. But as we're talking a little bit about worlds, we had this discussion. We had a kind of the conversation a little bit before about Han Yellow, as Han Yellow was like kind of one of the bigger boogeymen, for the last PQs, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, what do we do to build it?" And then FFG decided to release cards that worked with Jango, and now Jango, even though there's a new Boba Fett, Jango is kind of what people are looking towards to replace their Sabines and their Hans with, to say, hey, this is an easier deck to kind of get into, and it's pretty hard to beat it when he could tap everything down. So I thought for Academy training tonight, we talk a little bit about, is Jango Fett Tarkin Town beatable? All right, welcome to our Academy training. This is our segment where we talk a little bit about cool things as we learn new things about the game. One of the big questions that kind of comes up is Jango Fett beatable, right? Like, is he a beatable character? I think the answer is always yes. He was beaten quite a bit back in last PQ season, and he didn't have as many tops as he did. But Jango got some new tools in way of Devastator, in way of the War Juggernaut, in way of IG 2000. So there's some cards that kind of just gave Jango an edge. And in early testing, people are already very concerned that Jango is going to be the gatekeeper deck. Now, I'm going to openly state that I do not feel it's horrible to have a gatekeeper deck. I will say we got to be cautious, because if it turns into like a Boba Fett set one Boba Fett type, situation, we want to be able to watch it. But in fairness, it didn't have that viability in the last PQ season. It just didn't. Like, we saw a lot of Jango Fett, but we didn't see Jango Fett winning and trouncing everything. It still lost to Han. It still lost to Sabine quite regularly.
I think it was the third best, right? Or third most successful. I should say that really best.
Yeah. So it wasn't even top dog. Now he got new stuff, right? And if you want to go back and listen to old episodes of ours, if you want to go all the way back, I predicted this way back in last July. I was a big supporter. Everybody poo-pooed me for wanting Jango Fett, and I said, nope. I'm telling you that this leader is going to just be stupid crazy. And then as soon as they ban Boba Fett, look, we get Jango Fett now is rising up to the top. So let's just open the conversation up, and I'm going to off the cuff ask if you feel that Jango Fett is the kind of benchmarking deck. Like, if your deck can't beat Jango Fett, you probably don't want to take it to a competitive event. Do we all agree that that is at least kind of a baseline that we can look at? And we'll go ahead, JJ, if you want to give your opinion first, and then we'll hit Alex.
Yeah, I agree. Just the amount of cards that are available right now between all the different sets, Jango has a lot of, I would say, a lot of
versatility.
Yes, exactly. And he's able to be a very reliable leader, where you're really not playing from behind too many times with him, between the fire spray, between all the different pilots that you can equip, all the different events that you can equip with him to trigger his ability. He's very, very reliable, and a lot of lists have a difficult time really being a good answer for it without falling prey to the other archetypes that are out there, other leaders. So I definitely agree with the statement that he is kind of like the baseline, the benchmark of what to beat right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of like the past couple sets, right, where like Sabine is just like super popular. You should always have like some sort of answer for Sabine. And this one, you should probably have some sort of answer for Jango, be it your main deck or your side deck. Because, man, let me tell you what Jango does not like. Commandeer. So fun. So good. That's in my sideboard for basically Jango matchups, mostly. But it is pretty nice, if you're playing some other things. But yeah, like if they just TDR out like a War Juggernaut and, Jango was flipped, you just play Commandeer and you're like, cool. I have like a giant 7/7 unit that I'm going to kill Jango now with, and then it goes back to your hand, which isn't great, but it's better than nothing. And it's ready anyways, right? So as long as it's 6 or less. So like that's the plan that I have in the sideboard, right, for Jango, something like that. I think he's strong. I think he still kind of folds to control, but you don't see control early because you don't know what you're controlling yet in early meta, which is kind of like why aggro does really well at the beginning and then peters off as control comes. You just gotta figure out what's going on first. So we'll see. I mean, he's certainly strong, like IG 2000. Just, if Jango's out, you just exhaust 3 units. War Juggernaut's your entire board, and then it's also a huge thing. Like the Devastator off a triple dark raid is like 13 damage to base immediately. Don't worry about it. Or 9 to base and exhausted 4 units. So it's strong. I get it.
Yes.
We'll see where things shape up.
So let's talk a little bit about why Jango is powerful. Alex touched a little bit on it. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this. The Tarkin Town piece of it makes Jango even a little bit better. And that 5 less health, I think, is inconsequential for Jango. He does not seem to give 2 poops about that. But Jango got additional cards that he could TDR out. The Devastator and the War Juggernaut and IG2. Even IG2000 can be brought out on turn 2. With triple dark raid, and it's just, I don't know. There's some things that can happen that's just crazy with it. But because of the additional cards, it allows him to tap units down even more easily than he had before. Before you had to run some ground and some space if you wanted like ultimate tap down. Now you just got to run space. You don't need very many ground units as much to tap things down. Jango gets that 7 health, which is very important for a 5-cost leader. We've seen that be very, hard to deal with. If it was a 6-cost, for example, Plo could come out and just say, see, I have a nice time. And that's why I think Quinlan did very well into Jango, is because you could Plo Koon, or if you ran the green one, you could ECL Ayla out and just like wipe Jango off the board and just see, I have a nice time. And so, I wouldn't be surprised if we still see Quinlan, on the rise, because it's a great counter to some of the Jango stuff, especially the hand hate stuff. But we'll get to that in a few minutes. Jango also, could kill your Shard Warren play with Tarkin's Hound, so it's not as easy to race. And Jango has moved away from being like a very strict like aggro-ish deck to now it wants to be more of a tempo mid-range deck. At least currently, that's how people are playing most of the Jango. And because they're doing that, it gives them they have a little bit of bigger edge over aggro, with the ability to like tap down and slow them down, and then they can win in the mid game because what can you do when War Juggernaut comes out? Nothing,
Commandeer.
Commandeer.
Jango's always been has been good against aggro, specifically because he does exhaust their units, right? So he's usually winning the races anyways. But now he's got bigger units, so now he's just mid range because that's a better playstyle for him, and it works pretty well.
Yeah. So, what do you feel are good strategies to counter Jango? So the few I threw up here: shield decks, right? Like Jango can't tap down decks that have millions of shields. Jango also doesn't like out of hand like burn type damage, like Boba Fett. I think Boba Fett personally, I think Boba Fett can be decently good, because if you don't have to swing with all of your units all of the time to get the damage off, you just got to be able to play burn damage. Also, swarms that have more than 1 health per ship. If they only have 1 health, they don't do very well. But
a little bit less so Vader, more so like
Rex.
Yeah,
like my the Rex deck I've been testing or playing around with. Jango has a harder time dealing with all of that. Like if he doesn't have something to tap every one of my units down with,
or even like
hard.
Odd Han.
Yep.
Tends to go pretty wide too, because you're playing a lot of 1s and 3s. So like the wider you go, the less Jango has the ability to control your deck until he drops a War Juggernaut when Jango's out. But at a certain point, like when Jango's coming out, like you just gotta deal with it.
Yep. And then healing decks, anything that has a lot of healing in it, big healing. Like we're not talking like, oh, I'm gonna heal with repair for 3. I'm talking, like I could play multiple vigilances, or I have those Onyx Squadron Brutes that do that, or I have ships that have restore, or the Client. Yep, the Client's a great one. Or I have other ships that have restore, like higher levels of the restore on them. Anything that, like, if you can get to the late game with Sentinels and shields and then drop a redemption, a lot of times Jango feels really bad at that point, because you just start healing all your damage off your base and dropping Sentinels down. So yeah, go ahead and TDR in an Avenger. It's not going to do anything because unless you can kill it, So, those are the type of decks I think are really good counter strategies. Do you guys have any other decks that you've tested out against Jango that you think might do well, or types of decks?
I mean, like the yellow Obi-Wan deck that we've been updating for set 4 does pretty well in the Jango still, because you're not going to Tarkin down whatever I play first, because I just heal it with Obi-Wan, and it's blue, so it tends to have more control. Like, you got the Concord Dawn Interceptors, you have takedowns, Fell the Dragons if, like, the War Juggernaut gets really, really big on a flip turn, or, the Devastator or whatever, and then, like, Grogu. I feel like Mass Exhaust might actually be pretty good against Jango. It's kind of, I don't know, when you think of Exhaust, you think of Jango, right? So you're not really, the mirror match is kind of wild. I mean, I haven't played a mirror match in set 4 with this, because I'm not generally playing Jango, but there's not, like, I wouldn't say, like, other strategies. It's just more like what you comprise your deck, like what you put in your deck in your sideboard. You just have to, again, you just have to have them in mind, right? Like we were saying.
Yeah. All right. So then the other thing is these are some of the leaders that I threw in there that I feel like can do decent against Jango, depending on how you build them. Like Gar Saxon, for example, and Luke are both like shieldy decks. They're going to give upgrades. They could create spike damage. They have more. They tend to play more shielded units. They also have that 2-cost covering the wing that just throws a shield and an X-wing out there, which is, I don't know, silly for 2 cost. So like those were kind of like the shield deck wise, like those are kind of where I felt they could be very beneficial. Something like a Leia can somewhat, I think now with all these extra rebel units, has a little bit higher ability to outrace Jango if it really wants to, because Leia gets the dual action, right? Both on the ground and when she's out. So like by the time she hits her flip turn, she's just able to action economy, so she could do her stuff, play a unit, and then go to the next round. And like, so she can have the initiative to actually be able to get her ability off, which originally I was down on until I actually started testing Leia, and I was like, oh, actually this is pretty good into Jango, because I don't have to, like, what are you going to do? Exhaust something I already swung with? What do I care? Like, oh, and by the time you kill it, I'm just throwing another unit down and claiming. So either you don't play a unit, or you're not, like you're wasting resources, or you're not able to stop what Leia's doing. And like, I think there's enough rebel units you can officially have literally a 100% rebel deck without feeling bad about it. Period.
Yeah, just have it be really good, because there are a bunch of good rebel cards in the set.
Yes, they really, I don't know if they purposely did this, but they really built into Leia and said, here, would you guys like to play Leia again? Yes, please.
Yeah.
No, Leia's real solid.
Yeah. You obviously have your burn deck, right? You have your Boba Fett, which I think is a decent burn deck. And then kind of on the controlling heal side, you have Kira and Thrawn. Both of them can be very heal based and very control based to stop the Jango piece of it. Kira gives the shield token, so Jango can't get through things as easily. And then we have Piat, which I don't know what it is about Piat, but Piat feels like it's a kryptonite to Jango. Like, I have played Jango into like every single color Piat, and the only one I feel comfortable with is the stupid double green one, which I don't think people are gonna run.
Yeah,
no
one should run double green yet.
Like, you just like, even in the TDR version, which I don't really care to run, is like, oh my gosh, like, holy crap, like that actually, like, it just outperforms Jango. Like, it just can outperform Jango because it can throw larger cost ships down than Jango can.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe like a big ramp deck might be pretty good against Jango. I haven't really. I mean, I guess like Tarkin down Palpatine ramps, so like I usually beat Jango with that, but I'm not sure if like big ramp is a good strategy. It might be. I just haven't tested it. So, but that's kind of what you're That's what I'm getting from your statement there with Piat. It's just like, yeah, I mean, I just drop bigger stuff and I can just kill their things.
Yep, they can drop a Devastator the same turn you can drop a Devastator, and then when they want to drop Devastator Senior, you don't have anything to compete with that. You just don't have, like, you just lose. Like, oh, you're gonna waylay? When did you put waylay? Oh, you don't have waylay in your deck. Okay, you know. Oh, you want to know good to me at dead? I don't care. You can't go through it. So
I wonder how satisfying annihilating a Devastator or War Juggernaut or IG-2000 or whatever is out of a Jango deck.
it's fun. I will tell you from experience. We'll get to this in our next segment, but I've been playing Palpatine Blue a lot, just like a lot of Palpatine Blue. Though I've started testing yellow again. I might be back on the yellow train. I don't know, but the blue is just so much fun, and it's just like, yeah, okay, as long as I can make it past like the Jango flip turn, for the most part, like I've hopefully have out-ramped him, and just dropping, like, stealing their one of their units, it's just a feel bad. And it's funny because I did this, right? They TDR'd in a Devastator, and I threw a Sentinel out there, so they swung into the Sentinel for whatever reason, and then they did the damage back, and I flipped and stole their Devastator, and then, like, the end of the turn happens, and I popped it, right? And they're like, well, why didn't you keep it? And I was like, because it's going to go back to your hand, so I don't want to keep it. So I just killed it. They're like, well, that seems like a waste. And I was like, you don't have a Devastator anymore, do you?
No, I got rid of I outed your Devastator. Yeah. Like, that's a huge win.
Yep. How many do you run in that deck? And he never responded. And then next turn, I'm dropping my own Devastator. Like, all right, here you go. And then, like, the turn after that, it's an Annihilator. And at that point, you don't have anything left. So, like, there's nothing left for you. Oh, you haven't played any of your Fett's Fire Sprays? They're gone. I have a quick question, though. Can we talk about this just real quick? Like, does Annihilator kill all of the Fett's Fire Sprays in their deck?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Same thing with Regional Governor.
Which the regional I knew about. I assumed that's how that Annihilator worked. But I can never, you can't test, like, on the online stuff. It's, like, really hard to get at that because, like I never know how many they're running in their deck or anything like that, right? You know, like, you never know.
I dropped an Annihilator on my buddy's Obi-Wan leader and then knocked the 2 Obi-Wan units out of his deck.
Which is hilarious.
It was like 1 in hand, 1 in deck, yeah. And then I could look through his deck, so now I know how many redemptions to worry about and all that kind of stuff.
That's crazy, because, yeah, I guess that must have happened when I killed the Boba Fett the other day, too. I wonder if it discarded their Boba Fett units that they had, too.
It should, because it doesn't care about subtitle. Anything referring to the name is just the name of the card.
Yeah. Yeah, which is hilarious.
Annihilate Millennium Falcons.
Yeah. So the question is, what happens if that unit is attached to another unit? So if you have a Boba Fett attached to an IG-2000, it only looks at that IG-2000, correct? It doesn't care about the upgrades.
Yeah. I believe so. Like, I'll have to look up the card, but I'm sure it just says unit and then also deck and hand, right?
Yep.
So let me just double check that, but I'm pretty sure.
I didn't think it did.
Unit, if you do, because you defeat an enemy unit, then you search the deck and hand for each card, and then you discard them. So it doesn't matter if they're attached. Although, like, it's really hard for them to. Well, I mean, I guess you have, like, Han pilot and also Han units, right? So I guess that works.
Does it say enemy unit, or can you defeat your own unit?
You're searching your opponent's
enemy
deck,
unit.
So.
Okay.
You defeat an enemy unit.
So we're gonna just this is just Tanner tangenting, but could you imagine in a, like, Iden blue deck, right? Like a double blue deck, you can drop that just so that after you play your Search the Feelings, you put all your stuff on the bottom of your deck, you can reshuffle your deck and it moves your vigilance all the way back up after you've restocked. Like, I don't know, that seems like a silly niche thing, but that would be that's hilarious. I never thought about that. Like, oh, I'm just gonna get rid of this 2-drop that I don't care about anymore and defeat everything for it, and then I get to reshuffle my deck. Seems pretty good to me.
Yeah, actually,
yeah, well, enemy unit.
Okay, so that's why I asked if it was enemy unit or not. All right, never mind then. So anyway, long story short, these are some of the leaders I feel are pretty well poised. I guess we didn't really talk about Rey. I think Rey has the hand destruction piece, and I didn't throw Quinlan on here just because the hand destruction, I don't know if it's going to slow Jango down enough to make it matter or not. I don't know because I've not tested that.
Communications take out events, so if you get hit their TDRs or whatever. That helps out a lot.
Yes. And it's not like they can resource a TDR and like smuggle it back out unless you have a tech and they don't ever run tech.
Yeah, I mean, if at that point it's like, well, so be it, right? They snuck tack into their Jango deck, so I can't account for something like that.
But so these are kind of the decks I feel like. I didn't want to give you specific decks that I think are going to counter Jango. I think that'll come. But these are kind of the leaders I would be looking towards, like fielding if I was saying, hey, I have to tech specifically against Jango in the meta. I think these are the ones that are probably strongest poised to be able to counter some of it. With the caveat that I think Quinlan could make a reappearance with the Tarkin Town aspect, being able to a Quinlan red deck being able to be good again. Or not again, but good still against the Jango deck.
Yep.
All right. Anything else about Jango before we run away and look at some decks?
You think there's a possibility that he might be the second leader to get?
No. If we're gonna be honest, I don't think so. I like people thought the same thing with Han, and Han still didn't. Even as much as Han won, Han still did not edge things out. Like he still was underneath Boba's by like 15 to 20%, something like that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I don't personally foresee it. I feel that they made this set a little bit stronger. And the fact that the worst would be is if Piat's the only thing that kills Jango, do you just run Piat versus Jango all the time? And then, if we are running more Piats, is that going to push more aggro out, or does it bring more aggro in? And then that's when does Pelp just come back and say, it's going to be a Pelp meta and everybody's just going to run Pelp again? I don't know.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, I ran a lot of Pelp, and as you all know, so I don't know. Anyway, that's our Jango. Hopefully that helps you as you kind of work through your journey to, try to find a deck that you want to play that's not a Jango deck. And unless you want to play Jango, then more power to you. And hopefully I crush you at tables, just because Jango shouldn't be that powerful. But yeah. Anyway,